Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are going to be looking at some changelogs which happened over the last few days in War Thunder. Turns out there's been a ton of different changes in the game just over these last 2 days, on the 29th and the 30th. I apologize for there not being a video yesterday. I basically just wanted to enjoy my birthday and relax, and that's what I was able to do. I had a wonderful day, and let's get back into the War Thunder stuff. So the first server update was from the 29th, and it starts off with some changes to the Mi-28N and the Ka-52. Basically, the S-13DF missile has been changed to the S-130F, with the A-92 explosive weight equal to 6.9 kilos. An incorrect calculation of TNT equivalent required for striking armored targets has been corrected that led to an ammunition type change for balance reasons. So, if you haven't played a lot of high-ranking ground recently, one of the things that happens on very specific maps, one of the maps is Ash River, another map is Corellia, is people will first spawn stuff like Mi-28Ns, K-52s, and K-50s because you can get an easy way to the battlefield and then just spam rockets at MBTs which are unbeknownst. Also at the same time, since a lot of missile AA try and use missiles to take them down, since they can actually fire from quite a distance away, what you've got to understand is when the rockets are fired, it sets off the proximity fuse of the missile, so you can't actually kill them. It's incredibly annoying, and what ends up happening every so often is one of the helicopters will get 5 or 6 kills, and the match is pretty much ended in the first minute of the game. Now, generally when they come over, normally they only trade 1 for 1, so it's not a huge deal. But at the end of the day, it's just one of those things which is very isolated to specific maps because of how the spawns for helicopters work, and now they've implemented this to try and help that out, and hopefully it'll mean that they won't just be able to annihilate missiles out of the air while also annihilating everything else on the ground. It's incredibly frustrating. They're the only helicopters that ever really do this, apart from the H-1G, and the H-1G is a lot less powerful than these two vehicles. They also have the multi-role capability of being able to be spawned in the later parts of the game and also be very effective. The RS-82 and the RS-132 rockets, the RB-05A missile, missing overpressure damage has been fixed. Well, wonderful. Unfortunately, more recently, missiles have been very annoying when it comes to overpressure, so let's see what they're doing. The radius of shockwaves has been recalculated. The damage radius has been set according to the peak value of the shockwave's frontal pressure. For vehicles with an open fighting compartment, the threshold values have been set to 100 kPa to result in an unconditional crew knockout, and 30 kPa as a minimal value to damage the crew. So pretty much ADMs are a little bit less good, same with rockets and stuff like that, and also bombs. It was pretty ridiculous for the last month or so when it comes to especially AGMs against stuff like radar guided AAs. The one thing you don't want to do in a game like War Thunder is make AGMs even more powerful, and that is what that's what they did with the overpressure stuff. I've been spading the PGZ recently, playing a bit of China, having a bit of fun, and it was just ridiculous. Playing against stuff like G91s, stuff like A4s, stuff like, any nation which has access to some Nord or AGM variety in the form of maybe a bullpup, because they would land 30 meters away from you and you would die. The PGZ is not an open-top vehicle, it is a closed vehicle, it just doesn't have a lot of armor, and it was just incredibly annoying to play against these things because you felt it's such a massive disadvantage, well, because they didn't even have to aim at all to be able to kill you. They just had to fire in your general direction. So hopefully with these changes, this will hopefully help, not just against AGMs, but also bombs and stuff for AA. The pendulum has definitely swung in the favor of CAS over the last month or so, which is never a good feeling. I know a lot of people are going to point out that, oh, at the highest echelon of the game, you have crazy missile AAs and they're really good. Yeah, that's true. How about the 90% of the rest of the game? where they're getting annihilated. So yeah, it's nice to see this change to try to address that. The Leopard 2PL, the turret armor has been additionally specified, a bug which resulted in a sharp drop in armor durability over the area of combined armor screen on the turret has been fixed. So they basically got rid of the hole on the turret, so now it'll be more survivable. This is good, it's more realistic, it makes more sense. The ZTZ-96A, the turret armor has been fixed. Previously its protection was slightly lower than the ZTZ-96. It had worse armor than the previous one. I mean, fair enough. The thing is, the ZTZ-96A, its survivability isn't really from its armor, it's from its crew placement and knowing, and also knowing, you know, how to angle it and stuff. But having better armor is obviously always going to be nice. I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference though, because the 96 armor isn't the best in the world as well. The T55AM and T62M1, a bug where the resistance of the combined armor on the frontal upper plate against the APCR shells has been overestimated, so 470 to 450 millimeters has been fixed. I mean, that's fair. I don't know who's throwing around APCR, if whoever that was and whoever put this bug report in, fair enough, but to be honest with you, APCR probably wouldn't do a lot to those things anyway, even if it penetrated and had better penetration. So yeah, pretty much as simple as that. The damage model on the machine gun ball mount and mechanic driver's visor flaps on some vehicles has been fixed. Previously, in some situations, armor resistance of these areas might be overestimated when fired at armor plate joints. Oh, well that's awesome. That is something that has been in the game since the start of War Thunder. The start of War Thunder Ground Forces. Even in CBT, the driver's hatch was always the one you wanted to avoid on stuff like T-34s and also on stuff like Tigers. The fact that they've now changed it now makes a lot more sense. So that's awesome. Lovely to see that. Let's see what it affects. So it affects the Patton 2, the M47, the Panzerbefehlswagen 6P, Panzer 3B, J1, J, L, and M, the Panzer 4, F2, F1, G, H, and J, the Tiger 2H, the 105mm Tiger 2, and then the Tiger 2P, Tiger E, Tiger H1, VK4501, so pretty much a lot of rank 3 and rank 4 vehicles. Brumbar as well, the Chaffee, the Pershing, the Sherman, the Patton, the M46, the M47, all of the rest of the Shermans also got affected by this. Then the T20, T25 Super Pershing, T29 and T32. And then the KV series of tanks, so the KV-1, L11s, S5 and 1S, and KV-2. The KV-220 as well. I hope they get the premium versions or the standard tech tree versions of the KV-2. Just so we don't have any issues. And then the T-34s as well, so the 1942 and then the T-34-85s. So this is a really positive change. It just means that you won't get any of those janky shots anymore where you shoot them and then it hits the driver's port and then just disappears into some other dimension. So that's really good. Overall, these changes are very positive. We'll have to see how that balance change works for the Russian helicopters. I don't think it will change too much. The major one here, though, is the shockwave on the frontal pressure thing. This needs to be looked at. I'm glad it was looked at. We'll have to see how it affects these vehicles going forward, because before it was incredibly infuriating to fight them. The next update was from today, when the video was published on the 30th, and it was a very large changelog. It actually came with its own It's Fixed article. Now, generally I just have a look at the changelog because the It's Fixed stuff doesn't cover everything that's in it, but if you want to check it out, make sure you do, and also, you know, you can comment on it and give your opinions. That to me is always very good. So, let's talk about the ground vehicle changes first of all. Erratic movement of guided missiles missiles when observed in flight has been fixed. So this is a thing that has actually been affecting War Thunder for quite a long time now, and it's very important at the higher echelons of the game because with stuff like the ADATs or any missile AA, basically when you were in a plane, such as a jet, you would see the ATGM. Well, it's not an ATGM, but you know, it's the guided missile go around the sky, but it was as if it was taking very distinct weird angles to be able to shift directory instead of going in a smooth way. And this meant it was quite hard to work out if it was going to hit you or not. It was quite hard to work out if you could dodge it. And yeah, it's nice to see that it looks like they've fixed that. We're going to have to do some testing on that because that has been a long ongoing issue in War Thunder for a while now. Physically correct tracks now shown in the hit camera. Oh, well, that's good. Always nice to see. A bug has been fixed which display crew members and modules in server replays as low poly models. This is a bug that keeps cropping up over and over and over again in different ways. Like I remember the last time I saw this one, the ZTZ99, the driver, for some reason was a low poly model, and also how everybody or all of the internal components are normally gray. For some reason the driver on the ZTZ99 was black in the model. It was such a oddity, but that got fixed pretty quickly. Identification friend or foe for commander's sights has been added to SB mode. Duplicates the gunner's sights behavior. That's pretty awesome. That's actually really cool. I'm glad that they've added that in. In the modifications window, you can now see a projectile's characteristics when you hover the cursor over it. Nice. Always nice to see more information in the game. This will increase the knowledge base and make the game easier to play for people. The Challenger 2 and Challenger 22F, the transmission, operation, and gear values have been specified. Intermediate gear values have been added to improve overall performance, so therefore it should have a much more smoother transition when driving, so it should be able to move around a little bit better, have a little bit better acceleration. This is very important for the machine since the challenges generally are quite slow compared to their competition. The VFM5, the transmission, operation, and gears values have been specified. We'll have to see how that is the case. I know there was a slight difference between it and the XM8 AGS, which was in the game. Obviously they have the same chassis, they have the same engine, so it seemed a bit odd, but it looks like they've fixed that. Even though it was a minor change, still a good one. The Baglet Panzer 57, a bug with missing duplicate gun controls of Commander in X-ray mode, has been fixed. So therefore, you'll be able to use both of them across the way. There's going to be a lot of bugs with the commander controls just because it's a new system, and I'm sure they'll iron them out over the next few months. The C2A1, a bug with incorrect mud shield material in the hangar, has been fixed. A small one, but a nice one. Vickers MBT, a bug where there was no turret control when selecting a sighting machine gun as the main weapon, has been fixed. Yeah, you would basically just be stuck there, kind of stabilized, even though the sighting machine gun is fixed, so it needs to move with the turret. It's nice to see that they've done something about that. The 120mm DM11, the type of the shell has been corrected and now features the remote fuse ability. Oh, well, that's pretty cool. I know that was one of the features that it was supposed to have when it came out. I'm guessing it never actually got there, but it's now nice to see that that's happened. The M47-105-55, they've increased the elevation angles from -5 + 19 to -10 + 20, so it's followed its brothers, the other M47s with the 90mm, to have better gun depression. This improves it quite a lot. One of the major issues of this machine was its gun depression. Now that that's fixed, it should be a solid vehicle for Italy, even though it already was a really good backup to the OF-40. The Roycat 105 TD and the MTTD, the number of steering axles has been reduced. First and second axles steer now. The fourth was previously steering incorrectly. So basically what you've gone from an all-wheel drive scenario to a basically a four-wheel drive out of the 8 wheels that exist. So that's going to lose a bit of its maneuverability. It's not going to be able to go around as quickly, which kind of sucks because their mobility for those vehicles is pretty good once you got them upgraded. But with this change, it's not going to be as nice, so that kind of sucks. The M56, the recoil has been reduced. That's, even if that's realistic, that's kind of sad to me, because the M56, when you fired the gun, you would go flying, and that was always incredibly fun. It also gave you a different gameplay thing, because it's like, well, if I fire here, you know, I might be completely done for, because of the fact that I might be in a really awkward position. But it looks like they've decided to fix that, so that is no longer the case. The M68-2, a bug has been fixed with excessive repair time on the turret machine gun. You just sat there for like 2 minutes trying to repair a machine gun. Oh, that's nice. I still would like some clarification on what happened with the track stuff. So after, I believe it was update hot tracks, they made it so tracks would repair very quickly on vehicles, and now it seems like that change was reverted, but I haven't seen any posts from Gaijin or their employees about the change back to what has happened. So I don't know whether that's bugged now, or I don't know whether that was a desired change. I just haven't seen anything that clarifies that that was an actual change. The Chieftain Mark 10, the Challenger Mark 2, and Mark 3. Elevation speed has been increased from 4.5 to 22.5 degrees. This is obviously very, very nice to see. The Panzer 3M, Panzer 3N, Panzer 4H, and the Panzerwagen 4J, Panzer 470A, and Panzer 470V, a bug has been fixed that prevented track durability increase when installing the modification Ostketten or Winterketten, which is obviously the thick boy tracks that we've seen. So it's nice to see that they've fixed that, and hopefully that means that they'll be a little bit more tanky. I'm still working out whether it's worth running the Kettens instead of just standard tracks. I think it's probably worth it, even if it is a little bit easier to kill, because they're a little bit larger. The M5042, M42 Contrario, 7534 M42, 7534 M43, 10525 M43, 7546 M43. The transmission, operation, and gear values have been specified. The max reverse speed is now 3.3 kilometers an hour, and the max speed is 38 kilometers per hour. So, not too bad going forward, absolutely terrible going backwards. A lot of these machines here, especially the tank destroyers, I remember spading them when they first came out, where they were a lot higher BR than they are right now. And my god, was it horrible experiences. They just weren't fast enough, their guns were not powerful enough, and I just felt like I was getting beaten up every game. So it's nice to see that over the years, you know, they've found a much better place in the game by getting lowered in BR, and also a few key changes to help them out. The SDKFC 6.2, a bug has been fixed that prevented the selection of the second type of HEIT round in protection analysis, so they basically just added it back in. The Challenger 2 2F, Challenger 2, T80 BVM, the T72A, T3485, Tiger H1, and Leopard 2A5, a bug with tracks turning while the turret turned in the hit camera has been fixed. So, if the turret turned in the hit camera, so would the tracks. That is a very odd one, but it's nice to see it's fixed, but I can't really visualize that in my mind, you know. I don't think I've seen it. Is it like they were coming off the body, like they were following the turret as it turned? I'm not entirely sure. The AMX-13 HOT, the hot display missiles displayed correct in flight and will now fly sideways. Oh, well, that's lovely. You know, at least the AMX-13 HOT will get a nice visual look, even though the vehicle itself is not very good. The STR V103, they've removed excessive gun traverse after installing the engine modification. So there you go. It means that you are not as unrealistic as you were before. The TADB VM, they've now fixed the armor, so it's now impossible to damage the tank with low-powered HE shells. This is actually something that's been happening quite a lot at high tiers, and I've seen it with a lot of the vehicles I've been playing. There'll just be like AA, which will spam low-caliber HE. Stuff like ADATs, Sergeant Yorks, stuff such as, Gepards, anything with a gun on it, And what's actually happening is it's like overpressuring the vehicles that it's hitting by just sheer amount of shells thrown at it. And hopefully, they do address this. It seems like they've done it with the TADB VM, but this is not just an issue that affects the TADB VM. It affects a lot of other vehicles, and it's kind of annoying. The KV-1S, the bugs related to the armor, which in some cases caused shells to ignore the armor at high angles by causing double ricochet, have been fixed. That's all very positive. Bugs in the operation of volumetric shells, which in some rare cases could cause anomalous penetration into overlapping bulk armor joints, have been fixed. So if you don't know what that means, basically one of the biggest issues that volumetric shells have had since their introduction in Update New Power is when two layers of armor meet. In the center of them, it adds both armor pieces together, meaning that you are, let's say you have a 100mm piece of armor which is attached to an 80mm piece of armor, and you have a shell that pens 120. So it should go through both. But if you hit on the seam where they connect, you are actually hitting 180mm of armor, so you wouldn't actually go through. Now obviously this is highly unrealistic. It's also led to probably a lot of clips that you've seen with shells ricocheting off stuff like tracks, or ricocheting off stuff like the sides of T-34s or the sides of turrets of machines, and also it's been incredibly frustrating to deal with for an incredibly long time. Now hopefully with this change, that has fixed that issue, because that issue was very annoying and I can't stress how annoying it was. So we're going to have to test it out, we're going to have to give it a go, but I do have faith that this has now been fixed. A bug where shells hitting a target at large angles could cause damage to some tank modules while ignoring the armor has been fixed. Well, that's a little bit odd. It's kind of like overpressuring the armor itself. It's an interesting idea. There was also some aircraft changes. So you got a bug that has been fixed that caused the seeker to lock on target when pointing an observation camera at the sun. The missile launch was also possible, which led to missile self-destruct. I mean, fair enough. That does sound quite funny. But at least it's fixed now, so you won't have any of those complications. A bug has been fixed that displayed HE round explosive weight in the info card when selecting AP rounds for autocannons. So that means you won't be confused as to which round does the most damage. A bug has been fixed that prevented automatic target tracking in helicopters at certain areas of the location Normandy and missions, so Normandy and Fields of Normandy. Oh, so it was even easier to play helicopters on those maps. Who would have thought? The Wellington, the 1,000-pound bomb, has been replaced by the AM-M65A1 to the GP Mark 1. This makes more sense since it was, I believe, the actual bomb that it used. So nice to see my wellies get a little bit of work. The Wellington is a lot better than it used to be. I remember back in the day, 5-6 years ago, the Wellington, I don't know if it was a bug or not, but it felt like a bug. Whenever you got shot in the turret on the tail of the aircraft, your pilot would just get knocked out. And it was incredibly infuriating. It made the Wellingtons pretty much useless and aerialistic. But it's always nice to see them around when you do, and the only one you used to see was the German Wellington, because that was good for grinding. The Ju-288C display of the incorrect material of the pilot's seat's armor has been fixed. Lovely to see. I'm glad that those boys are protected. The J7E, a bug has been fixed when the modification Type 500 was not required for 500 kilo bomb presets, so you'll have to get the modification now to be able to use the bombs. The F1 as well, the Mitsubishi F1. The display of the icons on the suspended weapon menu has been fixed. Icons are now set to the standard. Lovely to see. I do want to give that thing a go because it does have some really cool missiles. Maybe if they add something after it at some point. Fleet model, damage model, characteristic, and weaponry changes. So the shell tracking camera behavior has been improved, camera return speed has been increased, viewing angle has been increased, camera stopping distance before shells hit has been reduced. Well, that's lovely. You know, I personally don't use the shell tracking camera because it screws with my way that I actually fire in Naval. What I do is I hold down ranging shot for the first volley, and then I hold down my my primary weapon fire, and what this does is it creates a cascade effect on the guns, so they fire individually, so you get a nice wave instead of just a 1 or a 0. You get like a constant barrage with a lot of vehicles. It means that it's much easier to aim them, and it also means you can be more accurate on certain modules of what you're fighting against. By having the shell tracking camera on though, it cancels that because it just follows the ranging shot, so you're not able to do that. So I'm glad that they did add in shell tracking. I think it's really cool, but at least for me personally, it's not too useful. The Eric Geiss, the ship's name in the research tree has been aligned with the general rules at 12 Eric Geiss, lovely to see. The SMS Westfalen, the armor thickness of armor deck, bevels, and anti-torpedo bulkhead have been corrected. Nice to see. The RN Zara, the transverse angles of the 1st and 4th main caliber turrets have been increased from 145 to 150, giving it a little bit more use. And the other fixes, so the counting of the Atlas Stones achievement has been fixed for the Battle Pass. Now, I saw a lot of people complaining about this. I personally have 5 out of 10 for the Atlas Stones. I haven't been keeping track on how I've been doing them though, and I know for a fact that I've had a lot of people ask if it is bugged, because they seem to be getting kills on caps, and you know, it's just not happening for them. So this hopefully will address those issues. This will hopefully mean that, you know, everybody can get Atlas Stones. I'm going to test it out myself later on stream, just to see if it works as it should do. Camera speed and replays no longer depends on the selected playback speed. I think that's pretty nice. It means that everything is more standardized. A bug that made it impossible to leave the statistics screen in a single mission has been fixed. Lovely. And in the training squadron creation window, you can now navigate through the interface elements using a keyboard arrows or a gamepad D-pad. Nice. And extra functionality, always positive. A bug that caused the blocked crew icon to remain red in some cases after a lock has been released has been fixed. Nice. And now, in the battle log, it will be specified how the player's vehicle was destroyed by machine gun, shell, explosion, or torpedo. I thought it already did that. Oh, in the battle log, so after the game. Okay. That's actually really nice. That's good. Because it would tell you obviously when you're in the game, but it wouldn't tell you if you're checking stuff afterwards, so that's very nice. The active scouting button will no longer be displayed in the events selection menu. The function itself, as before, is available by predefined button, so you'll have to set that up. One thing I would like to say about scouting, I think it's a really cool mechanic. I really like it. I would also like to see it available in the commander's view for tanks. It doesn't make a lot of sense if the gunner view is able to do it, but the commander view isn't. I'm sure it's something that will come with time, but it is something that needs to be implemented. That is the change logs for the last few days. As you can see, there was a ton of stuff in them, ton of interesting things. So as always, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank BRFC, Swollen Ostrich, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe A, Conte Baraka, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Lafouche, Barine, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.